Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And this series, you're kind of tagging along as we're building a people and culture management system or HCM. And we're not going essentially line by line, so to speak. We're not showing a video on every little thing we're doing because that would just take years. But we are hitting on things that come up either quite frequently or we feel are great things that you would know whether you are having something, whether you have something like this or you're building it from scratch. We're trying to introduce and explain those key components that can help you in that journey or to maintain something that you already have. And so in this particular video, I would like to build the logic for our hourly, and you'll see if you were watching our previous video, I added instructions here, and I'm not quite happy with that. So what I'm probably going to do, because this takes up a lot of real estate, and if you'll remember, we do have this alert box piece up here. So I'm thinking that maybe what I'll do is turn this into a little bit more dynamic instructions. Like maybe I can just maybe what we'll do is just put a little button right here. Because one thing that I don't like personally is I do not like a lot of text inside a form. It just kind of clutters it. And plus, once one user does it once and they figure it out, they won't need these instructions to always be there. So I'll probably make this a little bit more dynamic with just a button and then that populates or whatnot. Um, so that'll probably be different in the next videos. But what I want to do is kind of the same concept that we did here with our annual. I would then now like to do it with our hourly. And when we think about hourly, this is where things can go quite wrong quite quickly when it comes to calculating. So any calculation for compensation, whether it be from hourly to biweekly or hourly to monthly or annually or whatnot, should always be done consistently. And our calculations are going to be based obviously on a 40-hour work week, and that any position less than FTE must be paid hourly. So what I want to do in this video is first take care of the calculations, because we're also going to have to check if this is hourly. We will need to take into account what our FTE is at. So let's jump over to our code here. And I took all of our code and I went through our code and grabbed out the variables that were repeating that we used over and over, and I placed them up here in as global variables. Global here, and this way any function can grab it and use it. So let's come down here to our function that is working on all of our pay and wage breakdown. So here it is. Okay, so we have this calc wage, and this calc wage, remember, is being fed by two different buttons. We have the annual button, and then we have the hourly button. And we're checking that with an if statement, and then we're adding on this piece here. So now what we need to do is build out our hourly piece. So what we can simply do is use a lot of the pieces that we already have. So what we can do is just come up here and grab this, and then put that there. And instead of wage annual, we want to put wage hourly, because that's the button we're going to check. And it's not going to be this, it's going to be the hourly. And then what we're going to want to do with this is, since there is, actually, let's make this that. There we go. So this way, if the hourly button was clicked and the hourly value is completely empty, what we want to do is give ourselves some sort of an alert. So we can select that variable that is comp alert, and we want to set that inner text to something. And let's just say, please enter the expected. We don't need the expected because they should know hourly pay rate. Semicolon. And then we probably want to set that hourly input to yellow, the yellow that we're using, and we can change this to any color. And since this is going to pop up, we want to also give it a timeout. So let's come up here and grab this and then use it. So the comp alert text is going to be empty, and we don't really want the annual pay. What we want is the hourly, like so, and 3 seconds will be fine. So that should take care of our hourly button and our hourly field value being absolutely nothing. So now what we can do is grab this and let's create this to not being equal, which means that there's a value in there, and we're not going to need this, but what we are going to need to do is check the value of that rec FTE, that FTE field. So the first situation that we would have is it being 1. So we can say rec FTE value is strictly equal to 1. Now, the reason why I'm using string is because it's going to come to us as a string. So let's show this here real quick. Let's do a comp alert. Let's just do actually a regular alert to show how this rec FTE value is going to appear. So let's save this, and then we'll go back to our form and run this piece of logic. So hourly button's pushed and hourly is blank. And then that should fire off this one and then that comp alert. So let's refresh this, and then we'll, I did it again. Let's see, what did I forget? Let's roll through this and see what it is that I forgot. Probably a comma. So one thing that we have to be careful about when we copy and paste is sometimes we copy things not completely. Like I may end up and drop off a point here, but what's common, the way that I did it, is taking out a curly bracket. So you can see our ending curly bracket is this else if. And we don't want that because what we're missing is our main function, this red. So that's what we ended up doing. So what we'll need to do is just put that there, and then when we scroll up here, that should be that. Okay, so now we're covered in that. So we got to pay attention to that when we copy and paste. And now it should work. So let's refresh. Pick up that semicolon. There it is. Okay. So now we want to, select hourly, of course. And then when we hit calculate, we should get the alert here. And that alert tells us the value of this. Now, this field type is set for text. It's not a number, it's text. So if we were to put a number in there without the parentheses, it wouldn't register it. It wouldn't come back as true because it's looking for the value, the type, and essentially strictly that piece. So let's close that out. And then there's that. Yeah, I'm going to have to do something with that. Okay, so now we know how it's coming to us. And let's go over to our page and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And I want to keep this text just because it makes formatting into the sheet when we write it a little bit easier, because when we retrieve records, we also have to ensure that the retrieval type is the same. And we want to retrieve as much as we can in plain text. And then if we need to do something with it, we can always do that dynamically. So let's look at our FTE, which is right here. And you'll see that this is text, in-group text. And it's going to come to us as text, not necessarily a number. Now, we could change this to a number, but again, if we change it to a number, then there's some other things that we have to do. So we're going to just try and run it as normal text. So when we come back down to, you'll see right here, our FTE is text. So that's meaning. My apologies, forgot to transfer it over. So now let's come back over here to our JS, and we can get rid of this. We can get rid of this alert here. Let's see, where is our alert? So, yeah, so we don't want this anymore. Okay, so now let's focus on this else if piece here. So it is exactly -1. And what we want to, or not -1, excuse me, is exactly 1. So what we want to do is first clear the background color of that annual pay. So we can grab this, change this around to annual pay, and we don't want it to be yellow, we want it to be empty. Because if not, right now it's that nice dark brown color that we have, and we just want to clear it, and we want to clear it right off the bat. And then we can start doing our calculations. So let's get rid of this timeout because we don't want to set a timeout to clear anything because these are going to be our values. And the way we're going to do this consistently is we're going to take everything to annual and then break it down that way. That way, each calculation is consistently applied, and it shouldn't matter if we use 2 decimal places. I've seen some organizations that take it out to the 3rd decimal place, just based on their system and how their payroll system worked. But we'll just do it to annual and then break it down. So in order to do that, let's look at our rec annual pay, because that's going to be the field that we're going to populate. And we are going to set the value to. Now, the first thing that we're going to need to do is take our hourly value and multiply it by 40 hours, which we're assuming is 40 hours. If we had 32-hour work weeks by a standard for our organization, we would just come in here and change this to 32. And we're going to need to do a series of operations here. So we're going to need to use our parentheses to ensure certain operations occur first. So we're going to need to take our rec hourly and the value of that times 40. And then since we have the weekly value, then we can multiply it by 52 to get our annual. And then, of course, we're going to need to do our 2 decimal places. So that'll give us our annual. So now we need to do our biweekly. Value is going to equal, and it's essentially going to equal this plus some. So we're going to have to add another operation here because now we took it to annual, but in order to get biweekly, we take the annual and divide it by 26. So there's that. And then we need one more, which will be the monthly. And instead of dividing it by 26, we simply divide it by 12. So now we have our calculations set for annual, biweekly, and monthly that we can copy throughout the rest of them, because we're going to also have to do this same exact thing again when we do 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75. So let's go ahead and check this just to make sure that we have everything set correctly before we go copy crazy. So let's refresh this and then do hourly. Please enter an hourly rate. Okay, good. That works good. And we'll just do 20 right now to make it simple. Leave that at 1. Should run it. 1600 biweekly. 4160 annual. Yep, that looks good. So now what we can do is work on our logic for 25, 5, and 75, because right now nothing will happen. We have it set for nothing. So now let's go ahead and let's go back here and do that. Let's make sure that we copy everything we need here this time. Okay, good. And this is going to be 0.25. And how we do 0.25 is we simply add, since we're doing it this way, we take the hourly value, multiply it by 40, and then before we multiply that by 52, we simply multiply it by 0.25, which will take that weekly rate down to a quarter FTE, and then we can multiply that by 52 and 2 fixed. And we'll do the same exact thing to this. Times 0.25. And then we'll do the same exact thing to this. So now let's save this. And let's go back to our form here. And we'll refresh this. And what we're going to do is use 20 because it's easier to see the breakdown, particularly in biweekly. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So we'll go hourly. Let's do 20. So that's 1 FTE. So biweekly is 1600. So 1600 should go down to whatever a quarter of 16 is 400. So 400 should be populated when we hit 25. And it is. So now what we can do is come back to our code and very easily figure out the rest of them. So let's grab this, come over here, paste it down. This is going to be 0.5, and we can simply just change this to 0.5, save, and come up here and let's just do 75 while we're here. And then we'll multiply this by 0.75. And now we should have the ability to use our hourly wage and then calculate the annual, biweekly, and monthly for any of our situations that we have. So let's give it a go. Let's refresh it. We'll still use 20. And that's just simply because we can look at it and check it to make sure it makes sense. So 20 at 1 is $41,000, $1,634.66 and some change. So now if we want to take that down to a quarter and hit calculate, that drops it down to $10,408.66. And then if we want to go 5, now it's not going to be 5 of this. This should be 800. Yep, 20,800, 117.33 for the monthly, 800, and then 75 the same. Okay, good. So now we have this built out. And one thing I want to check is, okay, salary, good, that clears, and choose. Okay, good. Good. So the other thing that I did before we stop this video here, the other thing that I did was I took all of our repetitive clearing lines of code and I put it into a clear wage fields. So anytime that we needed to just clear everything, like we do when we needed this wage type helper, those the hourly and the salary, we wanted to clear everything out. And instead of having to type this over and over, I simply place this into a function and we can call that function. And we call that function before we even run our logic. And one thing that to keep in mind is when we write a fairly decent sized, even if it's just a straight if statement, if else statement with no nested, anytime it's this large and running through a lot of different scenarios, like we have 3 different things that it's comparing here, it's always a good idea to test every single situation that the user may put the system through and then give it a response for that situation. So that'll be part of that user testing piece before we finally just wrap up and get done with this CRUD piece. But that's just something to keep in mind. So that's how you calculate our hourly or annual, biweekly, monthly from our hourly using JavaScript with our PCM tool. So if this video has been helpful, hopefully it has been, please hit that subscribe button. And as we continue on building our PCM, we will make more videos on how to conduct certain things so you'll know how to do it and plus also have the code needed to do it. So until next time, please take care.